Omniverse Breakdown. If you've known me for a while, you know that's a name that's stuck around for me for quite a long time. Omniverse Breakdown is something that's been tied to me since I first started my creating career, all the way back in early 2017. This level has gone through many different eras, hosts, decorators, and has led to two levels released with similar decorators and layout parts. The history of this level runs pretty deep, and since we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of its release, I figured now would be as good a time as any to go over its complicated history. This timeline was strung together using both saved Discord messages between me and various other members of every version of Omniverse Breakdown, as well as small leaks and previews that I have copies of. All of the old versions, footage, parts, and servers have been deleted since creation, and are lost to time in a way, so unfortunately they cannot be viewed. Because of this, I'm going to try my best to detail the events of this slow explosion of a level and its different versions of history. In the years between August 2015 and the 2.1 release in January of 2017, a large portion of people in the community, including myself, can be found on a Google Plus server called Geometry Dash 2.1 Hype. I found myself spending a lot of time here during my 2.0 days, seeing what different people could accomplish, or some of the amazing things they would create. It was in this server that I found my first post regarding Omniverse Breakdown. There was a small thread in late 2016, around a month out from 2.1, where a guy named Rust was looking for creators for a remake, specifically a remake of the 1.9 level Galactic Fragility. At the time I saw the post, I knew nothing of the level other than how it looked, and I was not skilled enough as a player in the slightest during this time, as I was still on mobile. However, the deco of it was enough to get me interested. I asked for a part and was given a link to join the server. There were a few people there before I was, such as Manhead Rambo, Lavandos, Juho? I don't know how to say his name. The guy that made Awakening Auras. And last but not least, Firobot. We began the layout shortly after the introduction to 2.1. Parts varied from gameplay similar to the part of the level they were remaking, or being completely different altogether. As time went on, the base of the level slowly shifted away from being a remake of Galactic Fragility, and started to morph into its own level, but we'll touch on that more later. I finished my first layout part in about a week, being the first completed part, and started decorating it right away. Unfortunately, this version of the layout doesn't have any remaining footage, but it consisted of a dual cube and ship, remaking Gigas' part from the original level. For deco, I wanted to do a kind of masking effect, with blocks revealing a beautiful and complex universe behind them. However, I wasn't quite able to make this in the editor, at least not the way I wanted, so me and the rest of the team thought it would be best if I restarted. I kept the layout part, but eventually felt that a new layout would help me with decorating. I began the new layout and started decorating it before it was even finished. This one actually has footage, so I'm going to be able to play it in the background while I continue to talk about the part. Where my first part was very dark, with lots of cool colors to kind of resemble space, my new part was very bright and colorful, very high energy and loaded with detail, mostly in the block design. My experience with the editor was very limited at this time, so I really relied on Glow to help me fill space, making the level what I would later call Glowgasmic. The end product was this bright, flashy mess of a part, and I adored it. This was, at the time, the best thing I've created. It wasn't much, but with my first few experiences in the editor leading to lackluster results, this felt like it was so much more than I thought it would be. I showed it to the rest of the team, to a varying degree of mixed reviews. But in the midst of everyone figuring out ways to improve my part, I get a DM on Discord. Hey, Firobot. This wasn't the first time me and Fyro interacted. We had 2 or 3 short conversations in our DMs, and we talked frequently in the Galactic Fragility Remake collab chat, which was still unnamed at the time. But this short conversation we were gonna have was gonna be the most meaningful of all of them. Just letting you know, I think you made a great part, and if it was my choice, I would have made your part in no matter what. This small message spoke wonders to me. My part that I put so much work into, that was getting ripped apart in this collab chat. Someone went out of their way to tell me how much they admired it. It was after this that me and Fyro started to blossom our friendship, turning into our eventual rivalry as players, always racing on each other and pushing ourselves to be better than the other. To this day, I still consider us close friends, and me meeting him in this game completely changed my view of the game as a player. The amount of people I met through this small interaction is monumental. I worked on improving my part over the next few months. This time, Juho, who I'm curious as to whether they remember this collab or not, finished their layout, which was an entire dual spider with tight timings and a very interesting yet well-synced click pattern. Manhead Rambo also finished his part, being the first part in the level. It was clearly inspired by the first part of Galactic Fragility, but definitely stood out as its own part. The deco was simple, as was the gameplay, albeit a little on the easier end. The original goal of Omniverse Breakdown was to be an extreme demon, but as more and more parts got completed, this goal eventually started to shift down to Insane Demon. Fyrobot also finished his layout part, being one of his earliest recorded gameplay parts at the time. Unfortunately, none of these other parts have remaining footage. There is one more part that did get preserved, however, and it was the part of another major player in Omniverse Breakdown's history, Lavandos. Lavandos was a pretty good creator, and managed to bang out both his layout and gameplay pretty quickly. No footage remains, but other than my part, this is one of the oldest preserved parts of this level, which is seen in this picture here. It was blue in terms of coloring, and laid the basis for the pink and blue color scheme the level would eventually adapt. It was after getting this influx of new parts that we saw a boost in server activity. A bunch of new people joined, and to celebrate this, the collab host Rust wanted to do something. He opened up a new collab, which was an Extreme Demon remake of the 1.9 level Rain Hell. And with this new project, named Bloodstorm, Team Rebirth was officially born. Team Rebirth had one goal, and that was to recreate as many 1.9 levels as we could in our own styles. Progress wasn't as much there as Omniverse Breakdown. Me and Fyro were the first two people to finish our layout parts, both of which still have remaining footage. I had one of the first few parts and opted to go for a challenging spider part. Fyro, on the other hand, had one of the first drop parts, which consisted largely of ship and wave. Omniverse Breakdown continued slow but steady progress, no parts being completed but each part having a decent amount of work put into it. Bloodstorm, however, died out again pretty fast. Inactivity began to plague the server, and Omniverse Breakdown grew stagnant. As fast as the team was born, it had died. The collab host, Russ, was still egging to see Omniverse finished at least, but his efforts were pointless. He couldn't replace the amount of decorators that were unresponsive or dropping their parts fast enough. The final product of Omniverse Breakdown ended its journey as a fractured and unfinished layout, with even less parts decorated. So, was this it? Was this the end of Omniverse's legacy? Of course not, are you kidding me? This is just the tip of the iceberg. After Team Rebirth's disbanding, I was really disappointed. This was my first collab ever, so of course I wanted it to be successful. I kept my part as like a memento of Omniverse, and would go back and play it occasionally to dream about what the level could have been. Eventually though, I got fed up with my dream of the level just being a dream, and I got to work. So, Omniverse Breakdown was reborn. I started working on a new layout, starting with the song Eurodancer about 30 seconds in. I wanted to make it extreme, but after making the first few seconds, decided it would be better suited as an Insane Demon, as I didn't quite know how to make good Extreme Demon gameplay yet. Quite frankly, I don't remember much about this version. The layout went unfinished for some time, containing my original decorated part. There are no copies or recordings of this layout, unfortunately. The layout was then deleted, being completely remade yet again. This iteration had, in my opinion, much better gameplay, both in flow and structuring. This version also had gameplay by Fyrobot in it. Unfortunately, this one follows the common thread of not having any recordings or copies. And here I want to kind of address that issue. A lot of these early events were derived from DMs I had with old members, and just my knowledge of what happened at the time. Most of the early footage and screenshots have since been deleted or privated, or even being wiped out just due to the deletion of Discord servers for like each iteration of Omniverse Breakdown. But I do promise that the later iterations do have a lot more footage of parts, even if most of them are from me. This level over time became my own personal project, even with all these names attached to it in one way or another. This new version wasn't just a one and done though. It was finished in its entirety, and word somehow spread to Lavandos, who took an interest in it. He asked to see a recording of it, which I was unable to send, but he instead got an unlisted version, which has since been deleted. Word then spread to some of the other Team Rebirth members, including the old host, Rust. Rust would back my version of Omniverse, hoping to see it also completed one day. In the weeks after learning of my version, he decided to grab some of the old remaining members, as well as some of the new faces, to reinstate the original collab. We both agreed we couldn't have two levels with the same name, so we came up with the idea of having mine be the original name, and to make the new one a pseudo-sequel, named Multiverse Breakdown. This collab also died out pretty quick, however, seemingly due to the curse carried with this level. A few layout parts were started, but even fewer were finished, and my version continued to have occasional work done by me. The new megacollab version was scrapped entirely, or that's what I thought at the time. In mid-2018, I got a Discord DM from Lavandos. Hello! Remember us? With an invite to the new Multiverse Breakdown team. Lavandos wanted to revive Omniverse yet again, based off the version that Rust recently revived. Due to this version of the level being higher quality than mine, me and Lavandos both thought it would be best to swap the names of our levels, with his becoming Omniverse Breakdown, and my solo version becoming Multiverse Breakdown. This new version of the collab contained a good handful of creators, like It's No-No, who would go on to later participate in some of my own collabs, and Viu, who would go on to be in levels like Virtual Collabs, Omnicron, and would release a host of featured solo levels, and who would also go on to remake his part shortly after it was shown in the first preview. This version of the collab also had two parts for me, one being towards the end of the drop, and the other one being the last part in the level. The drop part of the level was the first one that I made, and the full decorated version was unveiled September 29, 2018. The part was all in a teal blue, with lots of black and white accents, and it was entirely based on a creator who I enjoyed watching at the time, Surge. Now, Surge built parts in levels like Sigma, Elevadia, and Alpha Centauri, and I would watch his streams while he was building on these, and I would build my part as he did, drawing a lot of inspiration from him. The part didn't come out amazing, but I still like how the block design came out after all this time. This part is really great, as most of the Omniverse parts ended up being. While I was in the process of wrapping up this part, I also began working on my next part, which is the end part, and it had its layout previewed August 29th, 2018. The gameplay was very basic, as you could see, but I knew for deco I wanted to go all out. I mapped out my block design, taking a few days to get a look that I thought would be best, and would begin decorating every block. The block design was simple, being the basic hexagon force blocks, with each block having these white lines throughout them, giving them a very tech-like appearance. As I worked in the pink and blue colors that eventually became the main colors of the level, the parts started coming together nicely. By November 16, 2018, the part was completely done and showcased on YouTube. With completion of these two parts, Omniverse Breakdown, or at least Lavandos' version of it, was almost complete, only needing a handful of parts finished before being completely decorated. It was shortly after I submitted these parts that the collab ran into a new issue, however. Lack of members. You see, everyone in the server currently had a part, and was either completed or close to being completed. But we didn't have anyone to take these extra open spots. Lavandos began scouting for new creators, but with no new people joining at the time, Omniverse Breakdown slowed, eventually being cancelled yet again. Before the collab died, there was one preview that got released, showcasing gameplay and deco from Lavandos, Squee, Fightex, me, and It's No-No. The preview showed all the current gameplay, which looked very rough, as well as some unfinished deco from parts being worked on. The preview seemed to be at the beginning of the end for this version, as it was uploaded after progress began to plateau, before inevitably dying out. version falling under, I began to work on my version yet again. I opened it back up as a collab, getting some people to remake parts of the gameplay, and getting a handful of new decorators for the remaining parts. For gameplay, I got my friends Firobot, Chester115, and MSO Blue, who was also in one of the Omniverse Breakdown reboots. I also got Fiery and The One, both of whom I've met outside collabs to take deco parts. The One finished his part first, making this duel to this day. I'm still not entirely sure how it works. All I know is that it does, sometimes. It was in this version that the pink and blue color scheme became official, and The One did a great job at working with it. His part was very simple in terms of deco, but had a look that I really liked, and was hoping to see for the rest of the level. While other parts were worked on, I picked the first layout part I was going to work on, as there were still a large handful of those that were open. The part I picked was Chester's gameplay, and I wanted to do something simple for it. I laid out my colors, sticking with a light blue color theme. I put together a quick block design consisting of black blocks, blue bricks, and these big circular ground spike things. I also added this border that follows the player throughout the part, which added a lot of artificial difficulty to it. I finished off the part with some red pulses, and added some small things like arrows and these block structures. Coming off of this part, I felt it'd be nice to do the first part, which meant that other than the second part, everything being made up to the drop would be decorated, including the first drop part, which was still the one I made for the original Omniverse Breakdown. I got to work, keeping similar gameplay to Manhead Rambo's version, in the sense that it was mostly shipped. I threw together a really simple block design, and threw a mountain of glue on top of it. I finished off this part with borders, tying it into the ones later in the level, and made the easy gameplay a bit more up to the level's difficulty. I added some movements, and then took a break from working on the level, due to the slow progress at the time. During this time, Fiery was working hard on his part, having consistent progress, albeit a little slow. By the time I was finished with the beginning, he was about half done, and after taking around 3 months of working on other projects, I came back to Omniverse, with Fiery being 3/4 of the way done. I got to work on my next part, which I decided should be the drop part after mine, with the layout being made by MSO Blue, which would replace my second drop part from Lavendos's Multiverse Breakdown. I knew I wanted to make this one a pink part, due to my last few being all in blue, and I got to work yet again on the simple black design. This was pink of course, with black highlights, and I added even more glow, this one being all black to add a layer of fuzziness over the part, which is a look that really didn't aid very well. I added some ground spikes and made a quick equalizer effect in the background, reworking the same one I had in Acidic Wasteland and having it fit in the Omniverse. This left Omniverse with 5 unfinished gameplay parts, all of which were reworked as I didn't like the gameplay at the time. I began working on my next part, which was the part right after the drop, being heavily inspired by Virus, namely Artificial Dream. After setting up block design, I was happy with it, and I changed the colors from blue to pink, as I felt the pink looked a lot nicer with each block. After the blocks, I threw in some ground spikes, and stepped up my air deco a little bit with bricks, arrows, and these dots. I also added white pillars with glow behind them, to add some contrast. I put in a coin route, and made the transition to the end part with this black hole effect. With Fiery being close to completion, Omniverse Breakdown was left with 4 open parts, ranging from the end of MSO Blue's gameplay to the start of Chester's gameplay. Not knowing if I would be able to find someone to take the remaining parts, I decided to take up another one, picking up the part right before Chester's. I remade the gameplay, giving myself a new base to work on, as I really didn't like the gameplay for the part currently. The gameplay was rushed though, causing the part to be much lower quality than the rest of the level, which even then doesn't really mean much because there's not anything too high quality in it. This level isn't exactly known for its high quality gameplay anyways. The deco was rushed through as well, being put together roughly in a week by a not too experienced Boomsoks. It was a lot of blue bricks and rocks, with the blast processing ground spikes, as well as a simple arrow design. I also made this pixel art that I really thought I was eating with, but it's not all that. Now at this point, Omniverse was a little over 80,000 objects, so for the last two parts after MSO Blues, I decided to make them in a separate copy, building the entirety of the gameplay in about a day. For the deco, I made some Dansman inspired brick blocks before throwing it away in the second half, in favor of a brick and pulsing square combo. I kept the blue tone through the whole part, with it pulsing brighter. I threw down some simple air deco and made this background effect before adding some glow and calling it a day. Fiery at this point was in the final stages of his part, and aside from a transition, I felt it was ready to go. I extracted the part from the servers, wasting no time copying it over to Omniverse Breakdown. I finished up the remaining block design and added this really low quality transition in less than a minute, bringing Omniverse Breakdown to its final stage, verification. Now, I tried verifying it myself, and progress was really nice at first. I got a new best of 30% before fluking all the way to 64, and getting 47 to 87 shortly after. I ran into a big issue though, and it was that recording the verification would drop me so many frames. In order to get a run bigger than 30%, I really had to grind on it for recording. Whereas when I wasn't recording, I could do the level easily in 2 runs. I really wanted some kind of verification video for this level, as it was in the works for so long, and so I reached out to another original Omniverse Breakdown member, Firobot, bringing our story full circle. Not only was the level completed by an original member, but verified by another one. Originally, I thought Multiverse Breakdown was dead. Officially dead though, not Omniverse Breakdown dead. And I kept thinking this up until June of this year, when Lavandos reached out to me yet again saying he got bored, so he decided to finish up what was left of the dead collab. It had some new parts since the last time I had seen it, as well as whatever parts Lavandos made between the last preview and before finishing it. The new and final Multiverse Breakdown was released very shortly after, on June 21st, 2023. For the full level, I'm going to give you guys a live reaction of it, as the only other time I've seen this video is the first time I've seen it in June of this year. Editing Boomsoks here. I'm just going to talk about the level as it plays in the background. So this first part, I think, inspired by Galvatron's part in Artificial Ascent, my bad. This is Lavandos's part. As you can see, it's incredibly complex. He was a core style creator who kind of transferred to Glow. I believe this is also one of his parts, one of his earlier parts, but I could be mistaken there. This part is very colorful. What's the next part? I don't even know. I don't even know the layout of like this level. I just kind of know what happened. This is another Lavandos part. This is a part he made. Oh no, it's not actually. I don't know who made this part. This is another very old part. Again, I'm not sure who made this. A lot of the names in this I wasn't aware of. This is MSO Blues gameplay right here, actually. And I think Lavandos decorated this too. And then this is also his gameplay. I quite frankly do not know half the decorators for this. Now this is VU's part, who I mentioned has some pretty high accolades attached to his name. His part was pretty good. I really like the colors, the way the lava moves. It's a little simple, a little early 2.1-esque, but it gets the job done. I believe the gameplay was made by Fitex. I could be mistaken on that though. Let's see, what's the next part we got coming up here? Oh, this is my part. Yeah, you can see it in all its glory. This was touched on earlier in the video. Gameplay by Fitex, as you can see there. This is It's No-No's part, which I also mentioned. This is one of the higher quality parts of the level, of this level at least. I feel like it came out pretty good. Again, another very early 2.1 part. I don't know why he has this back to 1.0 in it. It doesn't really add up to much. Cool transition out, and then right into my part. There's some rocks in the background, clearly not the same as my Omniverse Breakdown part, as this was made beforehand. I improved my part as it was transferred over into Omniverse. And then there's this little end screen that I made with all the names attached. But yeah, that's it for the live reaction, and right back to the video. The ID for both Omniverse Breakdown and Multiverse Breakdown should be on the screen now. So if you guys want to check them out after this video, be my guest. Both of these levels I feel are integral to me as a creator. both giving me a glimpse into how to properly host a level of that caliber, as well as giving me good insight into what creating the glow design style was like. While yes, most parts are very simple and incredibly rough around the edges, it gave me a lot more familiarity in the editor, allowing me to become a lot more accustomed to the basics and improve my building prowess. When Omniverse Breakdown was released, it blew up for some odd reason. Within a day, it had over 2,000 downloads and almost 100 likes, which I really didn't expect from a level this low quality. Omniverse Breakdown is still the most liked level on my account, something that still shocks me to this day. Without this level, I don't think I'd be the creator I am today. And through this level, I was able to set up so many long-term friendships in the GD community that I still have to this day. With some of the people being people that I met in the collab, the original collab, that is. As mentioned at the top of this video, this level was released almost 2 years ago exactly, on October 26, 2021. It was by no means a groundbreaking level, quite the contrary. Omniverse Breakdown is just another level that's gonna sit on the servers collecting dust. What made it groundbreaking for me though, was the amount of value I saw in it. An archived level of a dead team, along with some of my first collab experiences and editor experiences, made with one hell of a lifespan that led to this glowy, over-the-top mega collab remake. I have so many memories of different eras of this level and the people attached to it. I know this isn't exactly in line with my past few uploads, but I hope you guys enjoyed this more documentary style upload. As mentioned in my 30k video, I love revisiting the past and just telling stories of where I came from as a player, or how certain events led me to where I am today. Both the Omniverse Breakdown and Multiverse Breakdown IDs will be in the description below, although I wouldn't recommend playing them, as well as the links to the channels of Lavandos, Firobot, and some of the other still active members of the collab. Lastly, before we wrap up, here is a complete list of every name I could find attached to these projects, as a final thank you to them, as they all helped me complete these levels in one way or another. It was an honor working with all of you, and I wish you all the best in your own journeys. And on that note, I'll see you guys next time. Take care.